We're gonna go live in a second. And we're live. Hi kids, so good to see you. I'm so happy that you're here, yay. So hi, so welcome to Positive Exposure Connects. I'm Rick Wadati, of course, from Positive Exposure. Positive Exposure is a nonprofit organization that creates a more inclusive and global community through educational programs, photography, film, webinars, workshops, exhibitions, multimedia exhibitions worldwide, bringing us all together, celebrating our shared humanity, making a more inclusive and equitable community, global community. And we're so proud and so thrilled to have with us today the amazing, the wonderful, the incredible founders of Kanthari, Sabriye, Tenberken, and Paul Kronenberg. We're here and there, all the way from Kerala in southern India. Hi, kids.
Hi.
And also joining us, and they're going to talk a little bit about their amazing program and all the things that they've done, and it's exhausting how many wonderful and how they've changed the world. But also we have with us also one of the participants, a former participant from Kanthari, our incredible, beautiful, stunning star of On Beauty, Jayne Waitera, all the way from Kenya. So hi, Jayne.
Hi, how are you?
Great. So hi, kids. So Paul and Sabriye, tell us a little bit about yourselves, because there's so much to tell. So just tell us how you started, where you are, what you're doing. Tell us about that.
And from the start or from now?
From wherever you want to begin. We're all family here because we're better together.
Hi. Okay. Okay, you start.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as you said already, we are founders of Kanthari, but actually we met each other in Tibet, very high up on 3,600 meters in a very dirty, rundown backpacker lodge, and that was 22 years ago. And of course, back then we didn't know what that we would be 22 years later. We would be here sitting together and sitting with you and talking about our life. Very shortly, in a nutshell, I was there because yeah, I'm blind, and I wanted to find out how blind people live in Tibet and whether there is a school for the blind, because I had created a Braille system for the Tibetan language. I was studying Tibetology. And I thought, if I can use it, why not blind kids in Tibet? And Paul was there, and he was working. What were you doing? You were working for the Red Cross and backpacking and voluntary, doing some voluntary work. And he was the only person that didn't think that I was completely insane when I told him that I wanted to start the first school for the blind in Tibet. So after a year we stayed in touch, and after the year I called him again, and he said immediately, "I come with you," when I told him that I would go to Tibet. And and there we were for 12 years altogether, which was a great advent. For altogether 17 years, but really like day and night and all year round, 12 years. And it was a great adventure, I must say. And now we have another great adventure, because we are from Tibet. We went to India, to Kanthari, where we are right now.
Wow. And what's happened? Now tell me a little bit about Kanthari.
So Kanthari is a place where we bring people from around the world that have overcome adversity, and they have gone through something in life where they said, stop. Now we've got to do something about it, right? So a social ill, we call it. They have been, they have to have a pinching point, a Gandhi moment. When Gandhi was thrown out of the train in South Africa, he said, stop. Now, it's time for action. So we bring people from around the world. It's a leadership training program, 12 months, 7 months is residential, 5 months is startup when they go back home. And they basically, they get all the skills, the tools, whatever they need to start and run own NGOs. So this is going to be, it's a very intensive, hands-on, experiential program. In the last 11 years, we trained 226 people from 48 different countries. There's more than 130 organizations now that are on a daily basis. They are benefiting lives of people that are on the margins of society. Thousands of them every day, several thousand of them that benefit some way or the other.
And they have to be as crazy as we are.
That's for sure.
Some of it was Jayne, of course.
Visiting Kanthari many years ago. So I remember so incredibly how every single participant, not students, but participants were there, and they were so empowered, and they had a dream, and you gave them the tools they needed to change in their own community, to make major changes. It was a call to action, but then you didn't just get people riled up. You gave them the tools they needed to make this happen, to create. It wasn't just a call to action. It was a call to action, and then here are the tools you need. Go and change the world. And one of those changers, one of those participants is our very own amazing Jayne Waitera. Hi, Jayne.
Hi, Rick.
How was so tell me if you remember, how was your experience at Kanthari and with this gorgeous organization? And then what was your dream, your goal, and where are you today?
Wow, so I would say it's actually 10 years ago, because I was there in 2009. And yeah, it's 10 years. We're getting old. So I think for me, Kanthari was like a dream factory for me, because like I left Kenya when the killings of persons with albinism were on the rise. And I knew I really wanted to change not just the situation that was at hand that involved the killings of persons with albinism, but I wanted to change how I grew up being treated. So as a kid, I always wished like people don't treat other people like me the way they discriminated and stigmatized me. So when I went to the school in India, by then it was International Institute for Social Entrepreneurs. They've really transformed to Kanthari, and I know I'm a red spice now. When I went there, I was I did not know exactly what I wanted to do. Of course, I knew the issues back in my community, but I didn't have an idea where to start and where to end. And from the day I stepped in there, I started reflecting, not just because of me, but also because of my friends with albinism that I had left back in Kenya. And the whole journey of 5 acts and trainings on how to start a project, implement the project, how to connect with the beneficiaries, and all these was in summary the kind of experience we had. But the beauty of it all was that we were being thrown into real life challenges, and we were expected to come up with solutions. So in the process, for me, I was able to align my personal dreams of changing perceptions around albinism and the training that we were getting from the school. And I think this is also the same time Rick came to India. I don't know if you remember how shy I was then. And I can say, besides the school giving me the skills and the knowledge and the expertise in running my own project and everything else, it was like my destiny helper, because I met you. And because of you, I am definitely the not shy Jayne anymore. I can smile in front of the camera. I mean, unapologetically, a person with albinism who doesn't have to justify why I am not otherwise. So I would say my experience in India was really the game changer in my life, from personal level, my self-esteem and self-awareness and everything around it, to my career and destiny path. So I would say since then, 2010, Rick, again, you came to Kenya, and I think, you've really walked with me, I think, from there. It's 10 years of positive exposure, Kenya. Wow. Yeah, we actually started around March 2010. So we're basically a decade of changing lives and perceptions around albinism. And I would say from 2010 to date, I have been running positive exposure. Of course, in the midst of it, I've done other things from my own personal growth, like career-wise and education and work-wise. Amazing. And just to mark the milestones, I would say with positive exposure, we've been able to establish and have a team and work in 5 counties now in the country. We have presence in 5 counties where we have positive exposure ambassadors. Those are people we've trained on understanding albinism, and they act as our community liaison persons. We have also managed to have a psychosocial support group for parents. Rick, we started the first meeting at St. Andrews 10 years ago, and to date, those parents are still like meeting in different parts of the country, and new parents who deliver children with albinism have a point to go, because, you know, for me, it's very personal with the parents, because if my mother found this kind of support system, she would definitely never have left me. I have also, because of the whole inspiration, climbed Kilimanjaro. And in a program that we dubbed Climb for Albinism, we were the first ever female team of 6 women with albinism to summit Mount Kilimanjaro to raise awareness on albinism again from Africa's highest peak. I also got selected for the Mandela Washington Fellowship, which is a US government-sponsored program. And I feel proud to say that I have met President Obama one-on-one and have had him engage on issues of persons with albinism. I can share the YouTube link later on his comments about the issue. And let me just say, I have managed to influence in so many levels, from receiving human rights awards like the Dutch Visitor Program for Human Rights. I have also been nominated as Outstanding Young African Woman in Leadership. Just early this year, I got nominated again among the most influential 100 Africans. Yes, and I also got into the most influential diversity and inclusion champion for Kenya this year. So I would say it's really the whole spirit of difference, and I think it's a journey that I have walked. I look back and I can't believe what has happened in the last 10 years, and I can't wait for the next 10 years. So really a journey of Paul and Sabriye starting the school in India that really met my needs. Back in Kenya, I was already in a teacher's college, and I was not in the teacher's college because that's what I wanted to become. I was there because that is what everybody believed. You have low vision, you can only become a teacher. I don't regret being a teacher, because now I use my teaching skills to teach people about albinism and other differences. So really life-changing.
The beauty of all this, Jayne, is that you're so sympathetic to not just people with albinism. That's a fierce cause for you, but you believe in, you work with everybody that's at risk of stigma and exclusion, and it's incredible. And it's
exactly.
So Sabriye and Paul, any idea that this was going to, I'm sure you know that so many of your participants, your graduates from your amazing program have gone on to really change the world. But are you surprised at all about when you hear all the things that Jayne has done? And I'm sure so many others have.
I'm sorry to say, because I saw a lot of what she's describing right now. I saw it back then already. And I still remember when she did her talk, her dream speech, Jayne, you remember? So
yes.
All the participants, they have to do a final speech, a 10-minute speech, and then they are getting questions, very critical questions from the audience or from a panel of experts. And I knew already when I announced her, this is going to be a lioness that will shock us in the future. And and here she is, and she is a lioness, and she stayed a lioness till today. And I'm not surprised at all, but of course I'm damn proud.
Thank you.
There's one thing that happened. It was a few days only before you were going back to Kenya. And there was an article in the newspaper that I think it was a 4-year-old child with albinism that was attacked, and we said, well, you can't go because the next one they're gonna kill is you.
Yeah.
And then Jayne said, no, I've got to go back. I have to stop it. That's what she did. And actually today's it's a great thing, because by coincidence today there's been a movie that's been made, a documentary. We visited 12 of our Kanthari graduates in 2014 with a film team in Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. And Jayne was one of them. And today the movie. It's called Kanthari, Change from Within. And I think we can share the link later on. It's on Vimeo. Today's been published, so everybody now can see that film. And there's a nice piece of Jayne's journey of what she's doing. There is another one in the movie is Monica, who's been fighting female circumcision also in Kenya. Then in Uganda, we've got Ojok. And we just spoke to Ojok like half an hour ago. And Ojok is a nearly 2-meter giant who was, the Coney's man tried to kidnap him. And they hit him with the back of a rifle and he became blind. And he couldn't, pursue his passion anymore. And that was stealing stealing honey from the wild bees up in the trees. And at one point he had a honeycomb put in a pot, left it there, and he became a beekeeper without knowing it. And now he's training blind people to become activists and beekeepers.
And environmentalists,
which is great. And then there's Stephen Onyang, also from East Kenya, who is running an orphanage for HIV, HIV orphans. So the parents have died, and he started a couple of years after he left. He returned back from here, and that's not in the film yet. You should actually catch up on him because he started the first Albert Schweitzer school for orphans, and he started on the 1st of January for 80 students, and the next day he had 160. So basically, he doubled capacity overnight, and unfortunately, because there's so many orphans in that area in Kisumu. So yeah, we've got a lot of people that are out there doing and changing the world, which is, for us, of course, that was what the whole purpose was. And for us, we're very happy to know that people are actually doing that.
See, the thing is, we made a lot of mistakes. We were so naive when we went to Tibet. We had no clue what we were going into, the big adventure. We didn't have a clue at all. And we made so many mistakes. And when we were in Tibet, we thought, how could we have been better prepared? We would have needed a school that had prepared us well enough to get better through the startup phase. And that's exactly why we did it. And now we try to let them go through all the mistakes that we made, but here in a safe zone. And there are lots of surprises, of course, and a lot of things they have to experience. But then afterwards, after they are coming out of Kanthari, they are not beginners anymore. They're actually already, they have gone through the worst, and they know what to do to not completely fail.
Wow. Look, and just the nature of the name Kanthari. Can you give me what that means, and what that plant is? And you described it so beautifully. It's so exciting. I want to be a Kantharian.
What happened is we started this International Institute for Social Entrepreneurs, which is IISE, which is a terrible name. And so we were looking for something else. And luckily, one day we were sitting right there. I can see the terrace from here. And Sabriye, we were having lunch. And suddenly Sabriye jumped up and she was shouting and she was like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then one of our colleagues, he looked and he said, that's a Kanthari. And then Sabriye said, what's a Kanthari? And he said, well, it's one of the spiciest chilies in the world. Then we looked it up and we saw that a Kanthari grows wild in the backyard of society. It's like the Kantharis, the change makers of the world. And it's a change maker, right? If you bite on it, you go boom, right? It wakes you up, it lowers your blood pressure, it purifies your blood. It has a lot of medicinal values. So we thought, well, at that moment,
and it's not liked by everyone, right? It's not everybody's darling, but it's healthy. Right, and this is a great thing. So change makers are not everybody's darling. You cannot change the world if you're always a good boy or a good girl. It doesn't work. But these Kantharis, they are so small and so spicy. They hurt a little. But on the other hand, they are making a very, very positive change in your system. And for us, of course, the Kantharis in the world, they're making a very positive change in the society. And that's the whole thing. Did you talk about the wilds, being wild in the...
Yeah. As I mentioned. So the thing is, we have 5 colors. So if you look at our logo is basically in the shape of a chili, and it's 5 small chilies that make one big chili. But there are 5 colors. And so initially, we started as social entrepreneurs, International Institute for Social Entrepreneurs. And usually if you ask people, what is a social entrepreneur? If you ask 10 people, you get 15 different opinions. And it's not very clear. And usually in the common understanding, it is that something like people make money and they do something social with it. And so there are we recognize 5 different kind of change makers. And Jayne already said that she's a red spice. So she's a red Kanthari. The red Kanthari are activists. And activists, they have nothing to do with money. Whatever they do costs money. But they want to bring in a change. They haven't, like Gandhi and Mandela and Jayne and Sabriye, for that matter, they're red and they say, like, stop, we're going to do something. We have campaigns and they want to stop certain, harmful traditions, norms. So that's the red Kanthari. We've got the yellow Kanthari. That's all about technology. So usually, just one simple example,
for change,
technology for change. So people need technology to be part in society. For Sabriye, it's a white cane. Right? It's a very simple white cane, but a cane costs, if you buy a cane in the West, it costs more than $200. So somebody's making a lot of money on the back of a person that didn't choose to be in that position. So it's, a yellow Kanthari creates technology that is required by people to take part in society, but at a low or no cost, right? So in Tibet, for example, we developed Tibetan Ubuntu. So there was no Windows for Tibetan language at that time. So we created Ubuntu and a speech synthesizer in Tibetan language, so it's free for everyone to use. And that's yellow Kantharis do that. Then we've got the what else we have? We've got the green Kantharis. Green Kanthari is all about initiatives, training initiatives, schools. It could be environmental projects, right? It's all about training, capacity building, grassroots projects, but they change the world in that way. Then we've got the purple one, and they're often forgotten because they are the artists, right? So
they're the rigs.
They're the rigs. Right? You use art, right? Your photography and creativity to create a mindset shift and a mindset, a paradigm shift in the world. So these could be journalists, authors, photographers. It could be actors, musicians. Everything that is to do with the arts, right? And then we've got the last one. That's the traditional, more or less, social entrepreneur. And these are like the Ojaks, right? They have a product that they create, like honey in this case. And with that honey, there's a product that they can sell. And from that, of course, they can still run their own project. So they're less dependent on donations in that sense. All the other ones, they need donations.
But for us, a social entrepreneur is only really a social change maker if the social change is in the focus and not the entrepreneurial or the making money part is in the focus. So, for example, with Ojo, the fact that the blind are not only beekeepers but also environmentalists, and they are advising the farmers. Immediately, the attitude towards blind people is changing drastically, and that's what social entrepreneurship is for us.
That's extraordinary. I love all of these. This is incredible. And Jayne, do you have a specific memory of being a Kantharian and something that a favorite moment, or were they all favorite moments?
Now be careful.
No, I think the most favorite, of course, was when you came to the school, because I don't know how Paul made that connection, but I think I needed a Rick in my life. And the other favorite moment was when I was sent for my internship in Mumbai, like so many hours away on my own. And I had to navigate India. And I would say, like, when you're exposed to real challenges and you have to deliver and they are expecting you to deliver and you can't fail. And the most favorite one was when I made my dream speech, and my project was actually the project of the year. I really for me, that was really important because, when you grow up, nobody believing in you and you present an idea that you've never presented before, and not just to the eyes of those that have been with you for the 12 months in the school, but in the eyes of others who had never met me before, and they actually believed in my vision. For me, that was really profound. And I would say that same reason is why most of the time I feel like I want to quit and just do something else and stop doing this. And there's always the call back. Remember why you started doing this and remember why you're doing it. And I even like, sometimes I try to remember like that time Paul offered me to stay back in India. And actually Sabriye's mom even offered me to go to Germany. And I was like, how can I go to Germany, live peacefully while my friends and siblings and sisters back in Kenya with albinism are being persecuted? Yeah. So really, like, I would say there have been so many aha moments. Like, there were so many aha moments, and to date, they resonate on a day-to-day basis. Like, even just when I'm about to quit, I'm like, no. And Paul knows because I'm always like calling him, like, when I feel so like it's time to just drop this and do something else. And I think it's human for change makers to also feel drained, because like the world out there expects us to be like very strong and strong. Like, I've been so strong for many people, and sometimes I feel like there's nobody who is being there for me. And I think this call actually for me like just makes me feel so good. Like, you know, this extrovert who just wants to talk to other people who feel me. This is what I'm feeling right now. So thank you for just creating the platform. Yeah.
So hey, amazing, just extraordinary. So I again, we're all so much better together, and we're also connected. But the most wonderful thing is we're all experiencing this lockdown as well, where we're safe at home. And so, what has that experience been like for you in Kerala, Sabriye and Paul?
Yeah, the lockdown. The long lockdown came very, very unexpected, I must say. The Kerala was informing us about 1 week, and we thought, one week is easy. We can be in-house 1 week, no problem. But then suddenly it was announced 21 days. And we didn't know what to do. What can we do in 21 days? And then it started, where we heard from many people, from many Kantharis also, who are in India, especially in remote areas. They were suddenly trapped. They didn't have time to go home. Some of them were trapped in the jungle, working with tribal women. Others were in some kind of strange villages, and they couldn't get home. So we found out that people were hungry, that people were not scared to die because of COVID, but because of hunger. And that gave us actually a purpose. And we started to immediately change all our actions, or everything that we thought we wanted to do. All our plans were changed immediately. And we started a kind of a blog, which is called Kantharis in Times of Corona. And it went completely around the world. It's now translated into 5 or 6 languages. And it tells about the Kantharis who are all in the same situation, whether they are in Uganda or in Bolivia or in Philippines or in India or Nepal or Pakistan or Afghanistan. Everybody is facing the same situation. However, they all are focused on different kind of beneficiaries, and of course have a different idea of what Corona can cause. So, for example, Farouk in Uganda is working with the deaf. Now, the deaf are heavily depending on seeing people's faces, lip movements. Now, when people are wearing masks, how can people who are deaf communicate, right? Or the other thing is that a lot of them, of course, have no access to radio, and many of them also don't really are informed much by newspapers. So they were basically, they didn't understand what was going on, that suddenly the world changed completely, and hardly there was anyone who could explain in sign language what was happening. So he stopped his activities, his core activities, and completely became a spokesperson for the deaf, which is amazing because he speaks sign language. So it's quite it's fascinating. it makes us, it makes us very humble to see how inventive, how innovative these Kantharis are out there. And suddenly there is so much energy coming out of these people who are able to actually completely change their ideas, their ground ideas, and are flexible enough to make it something new, and also to look at this corona crisis from a different perspective, sometimes even from a positive perspective, especially when we're thinking of the environmentalists who are now saying, hey, look at the trees. The trees, while the industries have to stop breathing, right? The trees now can breathe in and out. And we have to rethink, we have to re-coordinate our living ideas. So of course, all of them see the difficulties, the problems, the dangers that is happening through COVID-19. But because they are Kantharis and because they're actually positive thinkers, they also do see the very, very strong learnings. And one more little thing, what is very interesting, we thought nobody is going to apply right now because everybody is in their lockdown. No, it's the opposite. Now people are suddenly applying for Kanthari because they say, we learned that we have to change. We have to change our own habits. We have to change our life. And there is a new life to focus on. And now we want to stop with everything, and we want to create a new society and a better society that is better prepared for such crisis.
There is one wonderful saying from Confucius, and it's a proverb. He says, "We all have two lives, and the second one starts in the minute that we understand that we only have one." And I think that one is a really good one at this point in time, that a lot of people, they start to rethink, what have I been doing for the last 30, 40 years, right? And where is my true passion, right? So many people, they are thank God it's Friday people, right? We always say, if I have to becomes I want to. That's where the magic begins. And so right now, what we're looking for, especially because we don't know if the international borders are going to open up, right? It might take a while, and we have to start a course as soon as possible. Without a course, how can we bring in scholarships, right? And we create this, we can start. So what we're now thinking of is to look at more Indian participants. So I hope this is going to be seen by some Indians as well, and they should apply as soon as possible, because once the interstate travel is possible within India, we could start the course. And then, of course, the other ones that have applied for this year's, we might have to move that either to next year, or we have to see how or the end of this year, as soon as possible, as international travel is possible again. Beautiful. So one more thing to add to Sabriye is we have people that, like Gauri Shankar, who is a child rights activist. He just goes around. He sleeps like 2-3 hours every night. He works together with Jyotsna Das, who runs Jana Mangal. She's been Jyotsna. She tried to commit suicide because she was beaten up by her husband in a terrible way, and now she runs an organization called Jana Mangal, and she's empowering women. They train them in several simple, very very easy to make items that they can generate a little bit of income, so they can be independent of their husbands. And Jyotsna Das is one of their beneficiaries, and these three they have helped several thousand people already in the last couple of weeks, making sure that they have enough food. These are disabled children, these are women, widows, single women with children, and a lot of them, they don't have tribals, they don't have this card, they don't have a registration card, a ration card. You don't get any food from the government. So you just fall out of that system. They fell through the cracks. So these are people that are running around day and night, and they have fundraisers online. If people can help them, that would be fantastic, because they need that, and they are helping those people. They're helping a lot of families of migrant workers. See, the migrant workers, in one to the next day, they lost their daily wages job. So, and they eat hand to mouth, right? Whatever they make that day is gone on food. So there's no reserves. And they went back, they walked for hundreds of kilometers. They wanted to go back to their hometowns, where at least there's family members, where they can survive. And they got stuck at the state borders. they got stuck in other places. And in the villages, they're not welcome because they say, you bring us COVID. So now they are taking care of those people as well. And these are, we're not talking about a few people. There's about several million people that are stuck that way. Right? Wow. So there's about 170 million people in India like that. So it's just massive. It's mind blowing. And for us, what we're very happy about is that we see Kantharis doing exactly what Kantharis are supposed to do, to stand up and do something, right? Yeah.
Well, wonderful. I had collaborated with an organization based in Sweden called the Wilhelm Foundation, and in collaboration with the Karolinska Institute, the Mayo Clinic, the Johns Hopkins, creating opportunities for us to work with individuals that are undiagnosed around the globe. Yeah. And so when you have a diagnosis, you have an advocacy group, you have specialists, you have doctors, you have family members, you have community. When you're undiagnosed, families are alone. So I about 9 months ago, I was actually at a hospital in Delhi and met and photographed probably about 45 families of all undiagnosed people, from all over India. And I really believe that may be a help. And they were all real activists. They were really supportive of their families so I'm going to work on that connection. I'm going to send you 1 million applicants in the next couple of days.
Thank you.
We'll be all over this. They'll love you. And the hospital that we worked with in Delhi was extraordinary. And the people there, the families, the love in that hospital. And they didn't have a whole bunch of things there, but there was a lot of love and a lot of community support. And we're building community. I was just in West Africa and Mali, and then before that, Netherlands, and then Australia, creating community, bringing all the centers of excellence for people that are undiagnosed together to know that they have a family and they have community. So, and I think this is so perfect for what you're teaching and what your program will help them train and give them the tools that they need to also be part of a community and fight against stigma, discrimination, and exclusion. Jayne, your turn.
Yep.
How are you doing during the COVID shutdown?
So for Kenya, I think we are now on the second phase of 21 days. Like we've been on a lockdown, not really like countrywide lockdown, but what they did is they put a cessation for Nairobi and Mombasa, so there's no movement in and out of Nairobi. And then we have curfew, like 6 to 6 in the morning. So during the day, people can go on with their business as long as they observe the social distancing and wear masks and things like that. Of course, it's harder because like public transport is affected and like most of the things are affected. But now what we've had to, for me as a person, I would say I am adjusting because I've always been working from home. So it's like, the isolation and this whole exclusion people are feeling now for people who've been marginalized in the society, it's not a new thing. We are used to being like on our own. It just gets hard when you can't now reach out to your beneficiaries who are like people looking up to you. So within the organization, so what we've had to do is like, for my staff who we work with here, they only come 1 day in a week. And that 1 day in a week, we have to ensure they get to work safe. They are like, we have to make sure we put all the things in place and ensure they have safe transport to and from work. But we are really like working more remotely with everybody. And the situation has actually now pushed us to think more digital, like a lot of our work we've been doing like community awareness sessions and forums and going to the people. And now we are re-strategizing to moving to our programs to digital campaigns. So we are currently like, we are launching the digital campaign on June 13th. Albinism Day will be launching our own digital campaign, which has 3 components. And the first one is an e-magazine, which is also downloadable. And we're going to be using the e-magazine to reach out to people out there. We've developed like game cards and training manuals to be downloadable for people wherever they are, so that even if we can't go to the village, the people in the village can download them and use them to train their communities. We are also scaling up our understanding albinism training to an albinism NI app. So the application is in development, and we are supposed to launch it on June 13th. So anybody across the globe, whether using Android or Apple, can be able to get like quick facts and information on their fingertips. Because, you know, like the world is like, there's the data around 80% of the world uses smartphones. So we are hoping at least with this, we're going to like not just reach out to Kenyans who are looking for albinism related information, but to people across the world. And finally, we are trying to work on the last thing. The last thing is we are working on just using our own networks to respond to Corona, to COVID. So like now we have women in our support group who already have the sewing skills. And from Friday last week to today, they've been able to sew 300 masks. So yeah, and with the masks, I'll try grab a few before we finish the call. With the masks, what we're trying to do is we definitely know, you know, for a person with albinism, besides like the basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, the issue of sunscreen is at risk because they can't even access the sunscreen now. And like even the hospitals where you're supposed to go get like screened and things like that are the hospitals that have been converted to like isolation centers and things like that. So we're trying to use they have to provide food, shelter, clothing, and then they have to think of sunscreen, and like disposable masks are being sold like one at $1. So you can imagine a family that has 5 children with albinism, like where do they get the money? So that's why we came up with the idea of making the cotton mask, like the cloth mask that are washable. And our strategy is we will give them for free to families and households impacted by albinism that are really vulnerable, but we are also going to sell them out. So to the general population, we sell the mask at $2.5, and every purchase you make, you help us like manage to give 2 more persons with albinism the masks. So, and we hope to start the distribution from next week. I know the masks are not the only essential things, so we are working on like a dignity pack. And the dignity pack here is like has some sort of food, some sort of sanitizer, the mask, like just like a care package. And this one, we are really like just going to target like 10 households in Nairobi and 10 households in Mombasa, because those are like the hotspots. And within these households, we are also looking at households. Imagine we have beneficiaries who are refugees in Kenya. So even if the government of Kenya comes up with a care plan, these people cannot benefit because they're stateless. So we are looking at people who have multiple vulnerabilities to benefit from what we are trying to provide for now. We hope at least if we provide for May, by the time we get to June and July, we'll have figured out a strategy to like ensure we reach out to more people. Like I can tell you, like every day my phone never stops. Even like people just asking for basics like food. And you see, it's hard because when you also don't have that same food, it becomes very complicated. And it was not, we were never prepared. You see, like for me, I was so set, like the whole of me I'm spending in the village because I knew I didn't have money and I needed to work on my schoolwork. And now I can't even talk to my grandmother because she does not use a smartphone. She can't even send me anything from the village, and I can't send her anything. So it's really like the whole situation has placed us in a position where we have to rethink and re-strategize and make things work. And like I think from yesterday I made the resolve just accepting the new normal and looking at strategies that will make us still continue being a going concern regardless of Corona, you know, like because we can't stop. And like I'm just looking at COVID as a public health issue, just like albinism and other disabilities are, you know, like the effort and the aggression that is being used to mitigate COVID is the same effort we are going to use to raise awareness and sensitize communities about diversity and inclusion. So it's really, I think work just began.
Wow, beautiful, Jayne. Extraordinary
Yeah.
work that you're doing. Sabriye and Paul, moving forward in this certain state, How are you looking at a more of a virtual program that you may be able to offer as well, so people wouldn't be gathering, or is that something? Because we have a program called Pearls, and Pearls is a blog platform which we would create specifically for you and all of your participants, or however that could work, however way that we can make this be helpful. But the Pearls project, take a look at our Pearls program. It's an online blog platform, creating a voice and a platform and visibility of all of our incredible leaders and our incredible community of positive exposure. And we would certainly love for you to be part of that. I think that may give you maybe a branch or a way to reach out to all of your participants and past participants and potential future participants. So that's yours if you need it.
See, we thought about it also. I mean, that's a good idea to look at that also, into that. We thought about this whole thing, this whole online and webinars and things like that. I think it's great on one hand. On the other hand, something is missing. And the missing part is, of course, the experiential learning part. So I don't know, Jayne, you probably remember, you were pushed into so many situations where you were basically learning by doing. And now what we have to figure out is, how can we make this virtual without losing the very, very important part of learning by doing, or learning by interacting, and really real-time interacting. There we still are thinking a little bit, because for me, a webinar, I attended a few webinars now, or in recent times, and it becomes a little bit like frontal learning again. So the teacher is standing in front of the class, basically, and ask the people to mute and not say anything, and then it can go on, right? And that is something that scares us a little bit away. So of course we are hoping for the best to meet again. I do feel that digital is important, but digital is not everything. We need to also get back into physical contacts at one point. We cannot be always apart. I know that I'm right now going against the trend. That's a little bit also Kanthari, right? Going against the status quo. But I hope that you understand what I mean. It is. We are regressing a little bit, especially when we are thinking we were so far with interactive sessions, with interactive workshops, where there is no teacher, or the teacher the teacher per se is not visible anymore, or is not there to guide them, but basically there to catalyze them. And therefore, yeah, I have a little bit of a little bit of a different opinion. However, we do want to take whatever there is for the advantage to get people together in the difficult times.
Of course. Beautiful. Well, that's great, guys. This has been so extraordinary, so wonderful to hear from all of you. I'm so proud to know all and to call you all a friend. It's just thrilled that you're part of the positive exposure community. We love you. We are better together. I just want to thank you so much for your time today, and stay healthy, stay well. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I hope one day I can give you real live, great big hugs.
Yeah.
So much.
Not a digital, but the physical one.
Yes. Love you. Thank you so much. Have a really
thank you too.
Love you. Love you. Stay healthy.
Bye.
We'll be
Bye.
soon.
All right. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.